Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, before we get into your good work, I want to know this first and foremost. We're getting on the 5 year anniversary of this pandemic, and it did so many things for all of us, changed, shifted everything.
Mhm.
Now that we're looking back, how much of living through that has affected the way that you live life and do things now?
Um, it definitely shifted. So I was very blessed in real estate. It actually helped us in Florida. People
Yeah.
flocked here, and we
Yeah.
were always considered a mandatory. We had to be open. So we actually did well financially. And I know other people were not like that. Plus, our state was we could stay relatively open, and the mask mandate wasn't crazy. But in terms of my life and my businesses, what it did was it accelerated. There was already a trend towards agents working out of their cars and working remotely from their homes. Um, it just exacerbated that, made it much accelerated it. So now the offices are empty, and trying to create and maintain the culture that we had is harder and harder. And with our industry, internet-based businesses had come right before the pandemic, and they've exploded. And now that people are used to that model and not demanding that they see their broker or even honestly know their broker, um, it's harder to compete because internet-based models have a lower cost structure, so they can hire offer commission. So I think that's probably been the biggest thing on as the owner of these companies. Agents probably think even more so. I mean, buyers were pretty much doing it a lot of the work themselves, the legwork themselves, and they over the pandemic became more familiar with the tools that are available to the public. So the actual finding of the house, we rarely find a buyer a house. We negotiate the contract and we help them through the process, but that whole initial part, they come to us with a list of properties.
So, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
If I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids right now at career day, and one of the kids wanted to know exactly what you do right now, how would you answer them?
What I do right now?
Yeah, for a living.
Oh, well, I improve and empower the lives of others. I happen to do it through real estate.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's what I would tell them. I mean, my whole mission is to improve and empower the lives of people that I interact with. But how that translates to a day-to-day basis is, we facilitate buyers and sellers so that they can move on to the next chapter of their lives. There's something that so it's interesting because I don't know if I'd say this to a grade school, but selling a home and buying a home is a life event. You
Yeah.
remember it in the next 5 years, or you always remember your homes. But it's never the life event that caused the need to buy or sell the home. There's always another life event that causes that. And so it's really negotiating and holding someone's hand through two major life events: the buying and the selling of the home, and the one that's precipitating that need.
I've had two realtors in my life, and they're still close. And I still hold them in high regard. My realtor that sold me my house now, I still meet up and we're good friends. And I've thought a lot about that world of being a realtor. It's a very specific, special kind of human. It's
Mhm.
like a priest, it's like a lawyer, and it's
No, no,
like a
it's perfect.
teacher.
Mhm.
It's like all of these different levels of
Yeah.
high professions that are wrapped into one. So my question is this: how do you all get this acumen? Are you born with it? Is it something that's cultivated through training? How do realtors get to a point where they're so good at what they do that they can really leave that level of impact on somebody?
I think it's a mindset that, I mean, we look for it when we hiring the agent. I don't know that it can be cultivated, because for us, because real estate by nature can be a very transactional business, and that's not the business I'm in. And
Yeah,
I don't want to attract agents that's what they think real estate is, and they want to be in that.
yeah.
So we do go after nurses, we go after police officers, law enforcement, um, people who have high customer service backgrounds. It's really we don't look for sales, we look for service, because that's, to me, how you sustain yourself in times when, because the market's very cyclical, and we want people that can maintain relationships, not just do well when the market's high. So I think it's a from I view it more as a personality type.
Yeah. So when you were in the third grade, I'm going to take you back to that classroom. What did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream life?
In the fourth grade, I was convincing my fourth grade teacher to create a fuzzy factory pencil machine in our classroom, and we started making fuzzy pencils. And I volunteered and was voted in as the class treasurer to run the business. And then
Wow.
we all went to the fourth grade class went to Busch Gardens with our proceeds.
Wow. You know what's so funny about you saying that? I'm a poet and I get all these ideas and I just wrote about the fuzzy pencil recently. And it was because,
What?
yeah, I used to go to this place called Showbiz Pizza and it used to have all these animatronic animals and you'd have pizza and games and it was just this palace for kids to go to. But whenever you did good at skee ball, you got enough tickets, I would always go up and get the fuzzy pencil. And the thicker, the better. And I used to love those pencils. And my son now, he's on the spectrum. He loves pencils and collecting things. I just wish I could find one of those vintage pencils somewhere. I'm sure I can on Amazon, but
Send, in Pod Match, send me your address.
okay.
I make them.
Oh my God.
So I will send your son some. So if you could just put your address in Pod
Yeah,
Match. And
absolutely. I totally will. So it's so funny you mentioned that. That was my favorite thing as a kid. So let me ask you this. What were speaking of going back to the earlier question about what acumen you are to really help people with property?
Mhm.
Because it's such a big moment. Take me back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised? What were the foundational elements of being in real estate, being an entrepreneur, being a best-selling author? What were these things that were cultivated and planted in you early on?
Well, this is not my first career. My first career was in pharmaceuticals. I was in marketing,
Yeah,
and I was in that career because I had a lot of pressure from my family. It was expected that we were going to all be physicians,
yeah.
my sisters and I. My dad's a physician. We worked with him growing up, and that was just the expectation. So we were all pre-med. We all went to the same college. And I had to tell them junior year, this is just not for me. And so then I went into the business route, but I stayed in healthcare just because I felt such pressure to stay in that industry. It was not until in a very short period of time, I was in my 30s and I found myself suddenly single with a 1 and 2 year old daughters, and um, going through a corporate layoff. And I thought, you know what, this is not working. um, when you have life events, when you're facing life events like that, I think it just makes you start reevaluating everything. And so that's when I said, I've got to pursue what I've always been passionate about, which is entrepreneurship. And so, in real estate, I've always been interested in real estate. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. And I thought, well, being a realtor, I can combine them both. So that was the pivotal moment. And then I created a plan that I could eventually work my way out of my steady stream of income, and support us on just the real estate commissions. So that was the impetus for that.
So what was the first client, the first moment where somebody got property, your entrepreneurial moment where you
Mhm.
knew this was your calling? You saw the look in their eyes.
Yeah, it wasn't honestly, it was more inward. It was just how I felt. It took 6 months. And I tell this to the agents that we recruit from, and I thought this was going to be the career for me, but it took me 6 months full time in the business to recognize I can I can support a family doing this. It's a pretty difficult industry. It's odd because it's so easy to get a license. So people think it's really easy to make a living, and it's not, especially if you want to sustain yourself. You got to have really tough skin. It's incredibly, I felt like I was thrown back into high school in terms of the, the, the whatever, the cattiness of the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I didn't like high school because of that. And so it took me 6 months to say, okay, I can find my own way in this and make it. And then it took 2 years for me to be totally comfortable with seeing a path. So it wasn't so much a look in someone's eyes, but it was just the feeling. I mean, you just get to help people through this incredible journey, and they remember you. Everyone remembers the realtors,
Yeah.
and the impact that you can have on these lives. I remember once very early on, like a pretty prominent physician came to town, and I got the privilege of helping her. And her family couldn't join her for Thanksgiving. So I thought, well, why not invite her to mine? And so she attended Thanksgiving dinner with my family. And so you and some of my best friends now were my clients to start. So it's just the connection that you get with people, the relationships that you make with people is what sustains me to this day. And probably was the catalyst at that 6 month mark where it's like, oh, I can really see myself doing that. When I was in the pharmaceutical industry, I was in marketing, and I did work pretty closely with pharmaceutical reps and the end user, the patients, but I didn't have a relationship with them. And here you really do form bonds with a lot of your customers.
So, in this evolution of being a successful entrepreneur, who's been that inspirational bedrock for you, that heroic force for you to be who you are?
I don't know if I have a heroic force. I have great mentors like Barbara Corcoran of
Yeah.
Shark Tank. She's a mentor of mine. She's phenomenal. She's in her mid 70s, and to see what she's done twice, she's very much like me. She was married, built up her business. Her husband, I mean, my husband didn't take my business, but she had to rebuild from the ground up after she was divorced. She rebuilt her business again. Then, like me, I haven't sold my business, but she sold her business, and then she didn't want to retire, and she had to redefine herself outside of real estate. When she sold her business, that's all she was known for. Well, she was very strategic, and she got herself on Shark Tank, and now she's known as this entrepreneur, a businesswoman, not just real estate. In fact, a lot of people don't even realize she started in real estate. So watching her, and I get to fly up every quarter and do commercials with her, and she's on our Zoom calls, and it's a relationship that's been very motivating for me to see somebody who's 20 steps ahead of me do it. It's been really nice.
So, as a best-selling author, what was the book as a child that you read that really made a huge impact on you?
Oh, I just read everything. I mean, I was, my favorite book was the original Boxcar Children. I remember reading that in elementary school, and just was, I don't know, I've just been fascinated by reading and storytelling and the impact that stories have on me. Um, with that one in particular, just the independence of those children um, struck a chord with me at a very young age. I've also been drawn to biographies and autobiographies, just learning about the lives of people in all different areas, and just understanding their walk. I sometimes think I should have been a therapist and gotten a psychology degree because I love the story. That's the first thing I ask, customers who want to buy a house. I'm always like, what's the background? Like, tell me about you. Like, that's what I'm really interested in. Um, so I don't know that I have any one book after the Boxcar Children, but that's probably the one that's imprinted on me at a very young age.
So the one thing about being a successful entrepreneur or professional is there's all of these different things that go under the title of what you do. Of
Mhm.
all of the tasks that you have to do and that you've done for years,
Mhm.
what is consistently still one of the hardest things for you to do? And what has become something that's become easier and that you've mastered because you've done it for so long?
The hardest thing is not being able to have the impact I want on some of the agents that I have.
Yeah.
I have seen agents, go from basically living in a car to now having multiple homes and being an investor and changing their family tree. So I see that I've seen that time and again with real estate. I know what it can do. Um, but not being able, some agents, I can't, I'm not successful at getting them to see what it can do. Usually they're just not patient enough, or disciplined enough. People say your income is variable in real estate. I say, no, your, your behaviors are variable. That makes your income variable. If you
Right.
have consistent behaviors, you have consistent income. So it's sad when I see an agent go back to their waitressing job because the tips are too alluring, cash in the moment versus building something that's going to take 6 months to 2 years to really see it. That's my most frustrating thing, I think. What was the other flip side?
Just
What is the
maybe something that was difficult that became easier that you kind of mastered over time.
I mean, just technically just systems and processes. I started out with zero, like literally none. I was 42 before I managed my first employee. And had no systems and processes for the first couple of years, just flying by the seat of my pants. And really understanding the importance of that and how that you really are going to reach a plateau if you don't have those in place. And so developing a process to developing the systems and processes so that they are not only developed, but they are actually used and followed through on. That I feel like I have a really good handle on now. And I really didn't have that skill 15 years ago.
So what gets you up every day? You have all these things that you juggle between writing and being an entrepreneur, art, all these things that are who you are. What motivates you to do all of these at the highest level that you can every day?
So I am a wonderer. I'm an incessant learner. I'm incredibly curious. So I wake up every day and it's like, how is this going to unfold? What am I going to learn? What new experiences am I going to have? Whose life can I touch today that will be, I always say, how can I make someone's life more positive? If my presence doesn't create a positive impact, why am I here? Right. And so and I encourage my agents to do that too. It's like come to a meeting knowing prepared. How are you going to influence someone's day to day? So that's what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you. You could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've accumulated over the years. What
Mm-hmm.
advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Oh, well, it's the theme of my book. Follow your own path, go your own way. Don't let the boxes that your family, your religion, your gender, your peers, your industry, don't let those boxes impact what you truly want in life.
So talk to me a little bit about breaking boxes. Give me kind of an abstract for everybody out there.
Yeah, I mean it's about confronting the boxes that we find ourselves in. I think a lot of people, and myself included, don't even realize some of the boxes. You only know you're in a box when you realize there's options outside the box.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't, in various aspects of their lives, they don't realize there are other options. There's other ways to do things, um, other ways to reframe things. And so it's a book about my journey through different boxes throughout my life, starting at the age of 10 and no, actually starting at the age of 4 and moving forward, and how I navigated them, sometimes unsuccessfully. Sometimes I way overstayed my welcome in a box. And, you know, fortunately now I think I'm more perceptive and I can recognize when they no longer serve me earlier and create a graceful exit strategy. And I wrote it in the hopes of again changing one person's life, one reader seeing a box that they had no idea they may have been in, or boxes that we put people in,
Yeah.
and the harm that could do. You don't even know the impact you're having. So that's the book.
Yeah. So what are you the proudest of everything that you've accomplished and become and evolved into in your life?
Mhm.
What are you the proudest of?
Raising my two children. I have two daughters that are just incredible human beings. They're 25 and 26 now. And, I was really worried when I got divorced I left when they were 1 and 2. And I was very, very worried about that and the impact that would have on them. But now looking back, um, I see what a blessing. I mean, certainly there's downsides, but it's a blessing because I became a much more independent woman, and one that now they are such independent women. They're so self-sufficient. They're making an impact in the world. And been I don't know if they would have been this way had we all three not gone through what we went through.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that gets your book, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I said earlier, I'm just an intensely curious person, almost to a fault. It's just this insatiable desire to learn and grow. Um, I don't know if a lot of people know that actually, but it's a constant. And then I've got so many ideas. It's just this constant exposing myself to new people, new ideas, new experiences, getting myself outside my comfort zone, and then seeing what I can do with that to help other people.
So the thing about real estate is that at the end of the day, it comes down to a simplicity of you've purchased something that you absolutely love, especially when you settle into a house and you realize that. When you look at your life of purchases, what's your favorite thing that you purchased? Whether it was all of the events that surrounded it or the actual thing or the interaction you had with the salesperson, what's the best thing that you've ever purchased?
Like a material thing.
Yeah, whether it's property or otherwise.
Mhm. That without a doubt, the house that I'm living in right now.
Okay.
My this house is. I moved from a 5,000, just under 5,000 square foot house, which I again thought I needed, just because of a variety of things. Just thought that that's what my role required to me living in a luxury neighborhood, nice house, or large house. Never liked that house. Never felt like me. And then decided I wanted a new house and looked and looked and looked, couldn't find the right house, which I was really frustrated with. Here I am, the broker of the American dream, and I can't find my own house. And I remember I have a twin sister, and I called her. I said, "Gosh, I just wish Graham's house would come up for sale." I grew up next door to my grandmother.
Yeah.
And so the next day, this guy called me and asked me to come list his house. And he gave me the address. And I said, "Is this Juan Manuel?" He's like, "Yes." I said, "I'm not going to list your house. I want to come buy it." It was my grandmother's house. And
Wow.
so I literally raced to my computer, wrote up a purchase and sale agreement, threw all my negotiating skills out the door, paid way overpaid because I did not want this house to go back on the market. And it's been 8 years now, and it has brought me such peace of mind and joy. I feel like I drive into a warm hug every day. It was funny because the first night we were here, I was a little bit worried about my children and how they would react to downsizing so significantly. And they were teenagers. And the first night, my daughter came out of her bedroom and she's like, "Mom, this feels like home."
Wow. I'm so glad I asked this question. It was just kind of I just what a great story. So as an artist, obviously with all of your materials over there, what has been the favorite museum or painting that you've seen? Something that brings you comfort that you love?
Um, it's actually not a famous one. I had portraits done. I didn't do them myself because, as I told you, I'm an amateur artist. But of my dogs, I have rescue dogs, and I'm very attached to my dogs. I've always have been. I've had dogs all my life, and so it would be the portraits of my dogs.
Very cool. So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of your book, they want to reach out, they have questions, hire
Mhm.
you, any of the good business,
Yeah,
where do they go to do that?
BetsyPepine.com.
Okay. Betsy, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your story. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.